Yeah, I had someone tell me this a long time ago, and it's something that's always stuck with me. It's don't pick a job, pick a boss. And so basically, what they mean by that is just make sure that you're hitching your wagon to the right person, because that's the person that ultimately is going to determine how nice your life is at the place that you're working. If you don't have a good boss, if you don't have somebody who really wants to see you win, it's going to be very difficult to be successful.
I was gonna go to Toastmasters today, but it wasn't meant
Yeah,
to
you
be.
still do Toastmasters?
Occasionally, when I get into like speaking season, which I got the FCDB one, I'll go and just
Just
brush up a little
Okay.
bit, hear something,
You
pick up a tip.
look, with the Denzel Washington still goes to acting classes, right?
Absolutely, man.
Got to flex your muscle.
LeBron's still in the gym. Exactly.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the BDO Show, a podcast for passionate BDOs wanting to level up their game with advice and stories from battle-tested BDOs. I'm your co-host Emily Detour, and I'm here with my two co-hosts today, Chris Hackney and Sterling Birdsong. Before we get into it, I wanted to always remind everybody to go ahead and hit the like and subscribe button. Make sure you share on all streaming platforms. And if you have any topics that you want to see discussed on the show, shoot us an email at thebdoshow@gmail.com. BDOs. Have you ever had a borrower bring in like a brother-in-law to do their life insurance? Doesn't end well, does it? We've all been there. When you require life insurance on your SBA loan, it's critical that you bring in a company that specializes in getting these policies in place for the SBA loans. The last thing you want is for life insurance to be the holdup. We all know that's a rookie mistake. SBA Protection Quick Close Life Insurance is the fastest, easiest way to secure the insurance protection that your borrower needs for their SBA loan. Their process is simple, hassle-free, and only takes a few minutes of your borrower's time. No lengthy paperwork, no complicated forms. They even have programs that don't require labs or doctor records for approval. And best of all, you will have the collateral assignment back in less than 24 hours. It's a no-brainer. Go to sbaprotection.com for more information or email Adam Bergen at adam@sbaprotection.com. Today, we are going to go over some of the questions that were submitted that go perfectly along with our episode for today. It's going to be, what do you look for in an SBA shop? And there could be many things you look for. You've got your leadership, you've got credit, you've got, just your team members, everything. So I'm going to go ahead and have Chris kick us off on the topic today.
You want to look at credit box to make sure the types of deals that you can source are the type of deals that the bank wants to fund. Second, you want to look at back office staff. Do they have the right support team, their underwriters, their closers? Third, obviously you want to look at compensation, but I wouldn't let that drive too much of your decision because an attractive comp plan, if you can't source any deals and fund any deals, is not an attractive comp plan because 0, 0, 0 is 0. So first, you definitely want to look at credit box, look at their support staff, and you also want to look at who is really driving the decisions there, who runs the shop internally. Is it the sales manager? How much pull does he have? How much pull does your chief credit officer have? Do your chief credit officer and sales manager always butt heads? Are they best friends? Because that's important as far as some of your marginal deals, how you can get those deals won. It's determined by who's got the influence internally in your shop and how good the relationship is between the leadership staff beyond just the support staff. So if I was looking for a job, I'd look at credit box. I'd want to run through my pipeline in the last year or two of deals that I've done and say which one of these would have gotten approved, which ones would have not, and make a decision based upon that. Then I would want to understand how many underwriters do you have, how many lenders, what's their tenure there at your shop? How long have they been a closer or underwriter? Because you want to know experience. That's going to help you to do more sales and origination. And then I want to know what's your signing authority? Who's got a $2 million pen? Do you do credit committees? And who has say-so on those committees? And you want to try to have at least 2 or 3 different meetings, some virtual, and I would recommend going in person to get a feel for the internal dynamics. It's hard to really deduce that via a virtual meeting. So try to fly out there, wherever the shop is located, have lunch with them and feel who's leading the conversation because that person probably has the most influence internally. Sterling, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I think I agree with a lot of what you said. I think that the key to this is really understanding yourself. And I'm going to go back to this probably a couple times during this conversation today. you need to know what type of deals you do as the BDO. And then you need to realize that you're not going to be the perfect fit at every shop. So you need to understand what shop could potentially be a good fit for you based on the deals that you can actually find. If you're a biz act guy, you probably don't want to go to a real estate heavy shop. If you're a real estate guy, you don't want to go to a biz act heavy shop. So you need to make sure that what you find and the type of deals that you see really aligns with that bank and their credit appetite. Because if you have to switch gears, that could be a slippery slope. You can end up burning some referral sources, or you can end up in a situation where you get fired before you actually have a chance to go out and find those new types of deals. The next thing I would say is you need to really understand the culture of the shop that you're going into. Are people happy to work there? Talk to the people who work there currently. It's not too hard to find out if people are happy with where they are or if they're constantly looking for a change. If other people are not happy to work there, I would not assume that I'm going to be happy to work in that environment. So that's definitely a key thing to kind of figure out. And then I would say that something that's really important is, do they really want you? And you can get a sense for this when you're actually talking to the person who is going to be hiring you. If you don't really get the sense that they want you to be a part of that team, that they want you because they feel like you're going to be successful, then you probably shouldn't go there. A lot of what these 50-50 calls come down to, and when I say 50-50 calls, what I'm talking about is these marginal deals that you have to find a way to get over the finish line. A lot of it comes down to how the bank feels about you. And if they feel that you are a good lender, if they feel like you're strong and that you are a good fit on this team and they want you to be successful and they hired you because they feel like you're going to be a top producer, subconsciously, they're probably going to give you more of those 50-50 calls, and they're actually going to probably help you hit that number that you were billed as being that producer for. So I would say that that's really a really big thing. What would you say, Chris, in terms of maybe some key things that you evaluate when you're looking to move into a shop?
Yeah, I look at the pipeline. Well, when I'm looking to bring someone on our team, I look at the deals that they funded, either Excel spreadsheet or whatever their CRM they can redact. I don't need to know the entity name, but I want to know term, use of proceeds, rate, kind of what was the strengths and what were the strengths and the weaknesses in the credit, and have them walk me through it too, because that tells me their presentation style, which we do credit committees at our bank. So I want to know, can they articulate a deal, or are they a lender that they bring in a deal and it's sent via email and they don't really know how to maybe tell the story of the deal? That's important for us, maybe not other shops. So that's the first thing I'm looking at too. I want to understand their background. Are they primarily sales? Are they coming from underwriting, that they had an extensive background, 4 or 5 years in credit first? Because I would assume then that they understand how to put together a pre-flight debt service coverage. I'm not going to have to look under the hood for a lot of their deals that they're pre-flighting or sharing with me. I'm going to assume that their debt service coverage ratios are correct if you've spent 4 or 5 years in underwriting too. Another thing I'll look at is, how do you spend your day? Hey, what does a typical Monday look like for you? If someone's saying like, and it's kind of different every day, like, I get it, but you should have a top producer has some level of structure to the day to some extent. Now, you might not be to the every 15-minute, quarter hour block, but you might have a rhythm to your day and a flow to it that you should be able to tell me, this is in my ideal day, this is how I want it to look. If you can't articulate that, then that tells me you're kind of sitting on your heels waiting for deals to come to you. You don't have a rhythm of how you go out to market and how you go out and source deals yourself. So I like to understand that as well. So that's another thing. If I'm a BDO looking, I want to be able to articulate my process for gathering and hunt. How do I hunt? What does my day look like? Maybe I get up at 8 or 7 and I work out, and then I look at my pipeline. I prospect for new people to call that afternoon. Then I make calls on my existing deals in the morning. And right before lunch, I call on my active deals. Understand your flow and be able to articulate that. It's going to make you more impressive when you are looking for that new shop, and have those people actually want you. And certainly a point I want to circle back to what you just said. I hate to use a buzzword, circle back, but make sure they want you. There are a lot of lenders out there that they basically have an algorithm, or they've done the math. If I hire 20, 30 BDOs that can produce X amount, maybe they get there, maybe they don't. They don't really care about you as the BDO. They're playing a numbers game. It's important to go to a place that I have to have Sterling, I have to have Alan or Ryan, because he's going to make an impact. He's going to be a great representative of my bank. He's got a great credit mind. It's not just because I want Sterling because that's 20 or 30 million guaranteed, right? Because if you don't hit it, or for some reason something changes and you just become a number and you're easily dispensable at that point too. I've seen that a lot with more of the kind of junior BDOs, the $8 to $10 million people. If you notice, those are the ones on LinkedIn that are always saying, congratulations, I started a new role with XYZ Bank. And a year later, now it's ABC Bank. Now it's DEF Bank, because they're just a number and they're not really vetting the banks where they're going. They're not really making the right decisions as far as understanding the places they're going to see if they can get their deals done there. And every year you get a, sorry, this didn't work out, and sorry to my referral sources, but now I'm at a new place where I can get deals done. That means you're not doing your homework on the places you're going to, because there's a right fit out there, I feel, for most BDOs there where you can do, 10 to 15 million, but you got to do the work to find it.
So you touched on something I think is really interesting, and it was about credit knowledge. You and I both share in having been underwriters prior to moving on to the sales side, but not everybody does. So I'm curious, do you think that it should almost be a requirement for you to have credit background before you become a salesperson? Do you think it's necessary for success?
I don't think it should be a requirement. I think it leads to greater success earlier on when you're making the transition. If you have a credit background, those first 2 or 3 years are going to be easier than if you don't, because you're going to spend less time looking at bad deals. Someone with a great skill set in sales, they're going to be able to get deals in, but they're not going to be able to vet them properly for their shop. And they're going to spend a lot of time pre-flighting, looking at deals and sending them into their team. And they're going to get a lot of declinations. And then their reputation will suffer, because then internally they're going to say, this guy doesn't know what the heck, or gal doesn't know what the heck they're doing. They don't understand credit or debt service coverage. And then you're going to have more of an eye and scrutiny on all of your files that come in. So I don't think it's a necessarily absolute requirement, but I would say those first 3 years as a BDO starting out, if you're coming from a credit background, you're probably going to fare better than someone without that credit acumen, just because you're going to spend less time on deals that aren't a fit for your bank.
That's a great point. I don't necessarily, I agree in terms of, I don't think you necessarily have to have a credit background, but I'll be very clear in saying, I don't know how I would do this job without a credit background. I can't imagine the terror I would feel going in front of a committee with 10 experienced bankers prodding and asking me questions if I didn't have the credit background that I have and actually understand what it is that I'm presenting. I think that there are certain shops out there where you can probably still get by without having a ton of credit knowledge if you are a good enough all-around salesperson. However, I think that it's extremely important to have that knowledge. But yeah, no, to kind of move on though, some things that I evaluate when I'm looking for a good shop, I'm always looking for turnover. That's a big one for me. Just understanding if there's been heavy turnover in a shop, if they're firing a lot. Average lender production is another big one that I look for as well, because you can never really go into a shop and just assume that you're going to be the top dog. You should never make a move assuming that you are going to go in and you're going to do exactly what the top guy did last year. So you really want to know, when you're looking for a shop, what does the average guy do here? Because if the average guy is only doing 5 million, you have to assume that you're going to come in and you're probably going to do something maybe a little bit more than that, but probably not something that's significantly more than that. The other thing I'm looking for is average turn time in deals. How long does it take you to get a deal from start to finish? Is it a 30-day process? Is it a 60-day process? Is it a 120-day process? If it's a 30-day process, well, hello, you're doing something special. But If it's 120 or more, then, something's obviously wrong there. And you have to understand that you're probably going to hurt some of your referral sources along the way. And then also expectations are a key thing. What are you expecting from me as a BDO? This is extremely key for people who are going into their first year. It's like, hey, I'm a new guy. Maybe I just started doing this 6 months ago. I'm fresh out of Shatterbox or whatever it may be. And now it's like, all right, well, you expect me to produce, but how much? Do you expect me to do 10 million this year? Do you expect me to do 15 million this year? And then, you have to really be honest with yourself as a BDO and kind of decipher whether or not you think that that's really going to be realistic for you. And then on top of that, it comes down to credit appetite. Is your shop actually the type of shop where you can realistically go out and hit the number that's being requested of you? Because, sometimes it's not realistic. Sometimes they say, hey, we want 30 million from you, but they don't approve anything that's not fully real estate secured with a 25% down equity injection, right? So your strike zone is this big. And so then you have to work to find these loans, but realistically, it's just not going to be a fit. So I would say that those are really the key things that I evaluate when it comes to, picking an SBA shop.
And I like what you said there, Sterling, about the top dog aspect of it, because right now you've seen a lot of different shops. There's $100 million producer, 80 and 60, and you're hearing these just astronomical numbers. And I feel like if I was a new BDO, I would be a bit intimidated, but also I would have this inflated sense of, well, if they're doing 100, I should at least be doing 20. Do you know, like, the amount of work it takes to get to $20 million, let alone 100 million? That's not easy. I know a lot of us, and it's to be applauded, but it's not easy to get to 20 and 25, let alone 100. Not all those deals are creditworthy deals. There's no way you can do $100 million of creditworthy deals. Now, and I'm saying they're all bad loans? No. But I want the new BDOs to not have this inflated sense of, if I'm not hitting 20 or $30 million of production, I'm not a good BDO. There's a ramp up period. To me, if you're starting out, if you can hit $10 million your first year, that's a solid year as a first year producer. Then the next year, you always want to try to increase your production. If you can hit a 30 or 40% increase in those first 3 years, and then by that time you should hit your stride, and then you can figure out who you are really as a BDO as far as your expected production. Those first 3 years, you're going to be all over the place probably, but the idea is that you should increase each year. But I wanted to touch on that with the top dog aspect, because I see there's so many people that are hitting these just numbers that are through the roof, and you're like, well, if he's 100 and I'm starting out, I can do 20, I can do 50. No, relax, calm down. We're not looking for those types of numbers from you, and work your way up to that.
When you guys were new BDOs, how did you pick your first shop? How did it, come to fruition?
My first shop picked me, to be completely honest with you. I was, like I said, I was already in underwriting at that point. At my prior bank, I had been a conventional underwriter for 3 years in what was called SBU, which was a small business underwriting division. So we were mainly focusing on credits anywhere from 100,000 to 2 or 3 million, but I was basically just turning and burning packages all day. I would start one in the morning and have it done by the afternoon. And I basically did that every day for 3 years. So what it did for me was it gave me a really good foundation, because I saw so many different types of deal structures, and it kind of just pounded them into my head over an extended period of time, where, you keep on seeing the same types of deals over and over, and you're doing spreads over and over again, to where it's like, hey, you really understand cash flow at that point. You really understand how to put a global together. You really understand a personal financial statement, because you've literally done it 1,000 times. And so I had gotten pretty restless at that point. I really wanted to be on the sales side. I always knew I wanted to be on the sales side, because I'm not an underwriter by trade or at heart. I don't really want to sit behind a desk and essentially write a term paper every day. And look, there's some fantastic people who want that for their career, and there's nothing wrong with being an underwriter. It's just not for me. I felt like I was literally dying every day that I was there behind that desk. I felt like I was losing myself as a person. I'm being dead serious. I felt like
Where's the underwriting podcast? We gotta start one of those.
I felt like every day I felt like I was losing a little bit of who I was.
Blood cells?
I'm being so serious. Where I'm telling you that,
I'm so sorry.
We love our underwriters.
No, I mean,
for the record,
for me, it just felt like by the time I got out of underwriting, I felt like someone with Stockholm syndrome. Like I didn't think I was going to be able to talk to people. I didn't think I was going to be able to go out and sell. I mean, by the time they actually offered me the job I had been begging for years, I was like petrified of doing the job, because at that point I hadn't.
Chris, you cannot laugh.
Talked to somebody for 3 years, and that's just how.
Well, that explains why he doesn't like to pre-flight his deals. Now I get it. No more pre-flights for you, man.
That's really how I felt. And again, there's nothing wrong with being an underwriter. If that's your personality type and that's what you want to do, then that's fantastic. But for me, it was draining because it's just not the person that I am at my core. So I was the squeaky wheel that eventually got the grease. I kept on telling my managers, all the supervisors that would even listen to me, I kept on saying, hey, I want to get on the sales side. I want to get on the sales side. And eventually what happened is a close buddy of mine, actually, who I just recently did a video with on my channel named Dario, he actually got hired by the bank and they were hiring him to be an SBA business development officer. Well, when he got there, he told them that he did not want to do SBA. He said, hey, I wanted to come here and be a conventional lender, not an SBA lender. And so they said, oh, shoot, well, we don't have an SBA lender. And so somebody had the bright idea of thinking, hey, what about that kid Sterling who's in SBU right now, who's always saying that he wants to be a lender? Why don't you bring him over here and see if he wants to do this SBA thing? I didn't even know what SBA stood for. I had no idea what I was signing up for. They brought me over there. They offered me the job. At that point, I was already ready to go be a financial planner. I had passed all my exams as a financial planner. I had already started seeing people on the side, but I quickly realized that it's a whole lot easier, especially when you're a 25-year-old kid, for people to ask you for money versus you asking them for their money. Especially when you're saying, hey, sir, let me invest your life savings and I have like less than $10,000 in my account, right? So I quickly realized like, hey, you know what? I kind of like this lending thing when people are coming to me and they're asking me for money. And in banking, they have the golden rule, which is he who has the gold makes the rules. So I quickly realized that was probably going to be better fit for me right now in the interim. And so I took the job really without even knowing what SBA was. I was just hungry. I just really wanted an opportunity. And so they came to me and they gave me that opportunity. And it's one of the best things that ever happened to me.
I was already underwriting. The job found me. I was already here, had the opportunity to get into sales and took that opportunity and ran with it. I was a little apprehensive at first because I enjoyed underwriting. So shout out to all the underwriters out there. Thank you for all that you do.
That don't have trauma.
I enjoyed it because that don't have trauma. I like to write. I don't have as much time as I used to do it. My sentences are very much succinct now, but I enjoy just the writing aspect and the analysis. And I would just have like podcasts and my headphones in and just kind of vibing out all day. So it was cool to me. But making the jump to sales, obviously, for a number of reasons, I wanted to be out more, helping more people on the front line there. So I made that transition. But I would say for me, it was an easy decision because I knew I wanted to make a path towards kind of leadership role. And it's a little bit harder to go through that route in my opinion, through the credit side. Because you usually end up chief credit officer or SBA credit. To run a division, you usually have to touch some sort of sales aspect. So that was part of the deciding factor for me is I got to get into sales in order to lead a division at some point. So that is why I chose to get into sales.
What about with the SBA shops to, I guess, specifically gear this towards new BDOs today? Should they be looking for a mentorship in their leadership? Like, should they be looking for someone that, because again, they're not going to come in there with $900 million pipelines, like ready to go. They're going to be fresh and new. So would you suggest if they are looking for a new SBA shop that they should be looking for somebody that can mentor them and teach them? Should they be chatting with underwriters a little bit more? Like, who would you gear them towards?
Yeah, no, odd person I would say is the BDA or junior BDO. because they probably spend the most time in the process, the entirety of the process, and have the best relationships with all of the stakeholders and spend the most time. Like Sterling or myself, we are bringing deals in, but we're not in the weeds on every deal and having to talk to the closer every day about a particular deal. So you're speaking to us, you're going to get advice on sales and maybe broker outreach. But if you're wanting to learn the ins and outs of that shop and get in under the hood, you want to talk to, the person that's living that every day, right? So I say it as kind of an analogy. Probably better to talk to like the nurse or nurse practitioner who's actually going and seeing the patient, and the doctor who's kind of reading the results in the back room, right? You're going to get more information from that person who's doing it day in, day out. They're going to tell you, well, this underwriter's slow, but here's how you work with this underwriter, and here's what I've experienced. Or this closer, you got to really help them on this aspect of closing because they forget this sometimes. So the BDA or junior BDO, however it works, or your loan coordinator, those types of people that follow a deal through each milestone. If I were a new BDO, I would latch on to probably the most senior of that role, whether loan coordinator, BDA, junior BDO, most senior, figure out how to connect with them, have them walk me through the process and the best way to get through the process, and who are the people I need to probably massage a little bit more than others too. They can tell you about personalities. A top producing BDO, like a guy like Sterling's very approachable, but he's also very busy, right? I'm busy. I'm not going to have the time. Sterling, I don't want to speak for his time, probably not going to have the time to give you all the information and ins and outs on every single person in the shop and the process. So if it were me, I would go to BDA, junior BDO, loan coordinator, the most senior of those groups, and reach out to them.
Yeah, I had someone tell me this a long time ago, and it's something that's always stuck with me. It's don't pick a job, pick a boss. And so basically what they mean by that is just make sure that you're hitching your wagon to the right person. Because that's the person that ultimately is going to determine how nice your life is at the place that you're working. If you don't have a good boss, if you don't have somebody who really wants to see you win, it's going to be very difficult to be successful. And again, this goes back to, what we were talking about earlier, where it's like, hey, make sure that you're going to a place that really wants you. Make sure that you are working with somebody that you really trust. And then, make that person your mentor. You should be able to look up to your superiors, your senior management. And those should be the type of people that you want to strive to be like in your career. And you should be able to try and pick up little nuggets and little pieces of knowledge from them. And you really should humble yourself, and you really should be a sponge, and you really should ask inquisitive questions about how to get better at your job. And sometimes it just comes down to just watch what these people do on a daily basis. Watch their habits. I used to go into credit committee every week, even though I didn't have a package to present, just because I wanted to sit there and watch other lenders present their loan packages. And I also wanted to see the reactions from the other committee members. I wanted to see how our CEO felt about certain deals. I wanted to see how our chief credit officer asked certain questions. I wanted to see how our bank president was going to support the lenders in that position. Because really, those are all mentors in a way. But also it just kind of, you learn without even trying to learn. You just learn through osmosis. You put yourself in the right positions to where you start to pick little things up, and you will make decisions based on things that you learned from going every single week and watching lenders present, that you don't even know that you're making these decisions. You just do it naturally because you've put yourself in the right position enough times to know, hey, you know what, don't structure it that way, because Lewis is going to have my head. Don't bring that in here. That's going to get matumboed. I
just got an email from him, and I'm nervous to open it during the podcast. Don't open it live
on the podcast.
I'll fall out
I'm joking. We love Lewis, but
yes,
I mean, you start to pick little things up, and so one thing I would say is that everybody in a way can be a mentor, right? I try and learn a little something from everybody. I think everybody has some value. I think that, even people who are maybe producing less, they probably do something better than I do. And so there's something that I can still pick up from talking to them. So one thing I try and focus on is having my own filter of knowing, what do I need to pick up from this person and what do I not need to pick up from this person. But there's something you can pick up from almost every single person. And so I try and find what that is.
Absolutely. Sterling, I like what you said too about reading or sitting in credit committee or reading the memos of approvals. If you're a new BDO, you should be consuming all the new approvals that however they're sent out via email, or just asking for those memos to read them, the credit approvals, to determine what type of deals do you like, how do I need to structure them, what's the industry experience we're looking for, because you're getting your reps in. It's going to take a while for you to ramp up, but you can see other people's pipelines and the deals that are getting approved and get that knowledge quicker than having to wait for your own deals to come into the queue. What
about, how do you guys know when it's time to let someone go? Kind of.
Well, I've never fired anybody in the bank. I have fired people in my other side businesses. So I'll let Chris take this one.
The termination conversations are usually mutual. It doesn't come as a surprise. You can kind of tell, hey, the deals that I'm submitting are not getting approved. The deals that I'm submitting are not the deals that the bank wants. My pipeline is not growing. I'm not really understanding why my deals, this is the one too. If you're not understanding why the deals are not getting approved, that means you don't understand our credit box and the credit culture. It's one thing if deals get declined and you understand why, but if you're like, oh, well, this is a good deal at XY, well, this is not XYZ Bank, this is ABC Bank, right? We had a conversation about what deals we do. We agreed upon the types of deals we do. Now you're here and you're not bringing in those types of deals. So mutually we've agreed to part ways. So usually it's a combination, obviously, of production, and then I'll look at the number of declines as well. And then your response to those declinations. Do you understand why they were declined, or is it just you're digging your heels on every decline and saying this should not be declined because of X, Y, Z? Well, that's not what we look at here. That's not important to us. We look at these factors when approving a credit request. So, it's an unfortunate part of the business. It's the nature of it. Being in sales, right? You unfortunately are expected to produce a certain number. I usually look at, this is important for us to cover as well, your ramp up period. Some banks are a little bit more lenient than others as far as the time you have to ramp up your production. I like to give people at least 6 months to ramp up your production. You should be running at least 3 to 5 million in that range in the 6 month period. 3 months, 90 days, maybe you don't have anything closed, but you at least have 2 to 3 million in the queue to be closing in the next month. So that's kind of the gauge that I look for. Okay, after 90 days, does this person have at least $2 or $3 million that's headed towards closing? If you don't have anything, if you're still at goose egg after 90 days, then I can kind of tell the writing's on the wall. This is not going to work out. Then at 6 months, I definitely want you to be as close to 5 million as possible in that period. Now, sometimes things happen, but that's important to ask your new shop as well. What's my expected ramp up period? I know you want me to hit this number at the end of the year, but what are you going to be looking at along the way? If I get to, if I'm at 4 million for the first 8 months, is that okay with you? What are my minimum performance standards, or MAPS is what we call them, minimum accepted performance standards? I think that's what the acronym stands for. If they have those too, you want to make sure you're able to hit those. We look for 2.5 million per month here at Bay First. We have that written into the compensation agreement. And if you don't hit those maps, we have the right to adjust your base salary and convert you to other plans. So you want to look at that too in your compensation, as well as clawbacks.
What about when it's time to leave a shop? How do you know as a new BDO, how do you judge that? Sterling.
Well, one thing I would say about that is that the grass is not always greener, and people do need to understand that. However, if your grass is dead, you have nothing to lose. So you need to think long and hard about whether or not you are the problem. Okay. This again goes back to you being honest with yourself, because, you really could be the problem. If other people are successful in a shop, if other people are getting production done, and for some reason you're struggling to get production done, I think you need to take a long, hard look in the mirror before you decide to just run and jump ship and move on to the next shop. Because as Chris said, we all see these folks where, they find a new shop every year. They have more announcements on LinkedIn about joining new banks than they do have closed deals. So you need to make sure that you look at yourself first and foremost and realize that it's not you that's the reason why you're not producing. Because I don't care what shop you go to, they're not going to be able to fix you. That's just the truth.
That's the clip right there.
I thought
that is the truth, brother.
What about you, Chris? How do you know, what kind of advice can you give to BDOs for them to know when it's time to leave?
Looking at your decline rates, if you're submitting 10 deals, if 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10 are getting declined, then that's not a fit for you. Also, like average turn times, look at your process too. In some shops, some lenders are viewed as more important than others. If you're not getting the love in the processing front, maybe it's time for you to go seek other pastures where maybe you would be a little bit higher up in the hierarchy, where they would touch your deals faster and your deals get closed faster. That's one that doesn't have anything to do with really credit box. But the main thing is looking at how many of your deals are getting declined, right? And also knowing, like, if they're bad deals at this bank, they're most likely not going to be good deals at another bank too. So that goes back to Sterling's point. You got to look and see if you're the problem and how you can fix yourself and your credit acumen too. Because some people think automatically it's, well, this bank is, their credit box is too tight. Credit box, and I could do 80 million if I was at this other bank, and then they go to another bank and they don't produce. Right. So it's okay. Well, now you're at your third bank and you still haven't hit that $80 million that you mentioned that you would be able to produce. Nothing wrong. Again, $80 million is an astronomical. I want to make sure this is clear. It's an astronomical number. I applaud anyone who does that sort of production. It takes a lot of sacrifice and hard work to hit that too. But just to blatantly say, I can do $80 million with a wide open credit box. I don't know if that's the case. There's a lot more to it than a wide open credit box. And that's not always an excuse or a reason to leave a shop just because of the credit box.
Do you guys want to get into the write-in question?
Let's do it.
Awesome. Yeah. Okay. We don't have a name, but they did write in, so we can snag your email because we can give you some more feedback in an email if you'd like. So this person wrote in and they said, "Greetings, I'm a fan of your content and looking forward to observing more. I'm currently being interviewed for an SBA BDO role, but only have a few years of BDR intake experience. The bank has requested that a 2-year closed loan or current pipeline report be produced for a third interview. How would you approach the opportunity, and are you aware of any standard templates that could be useful?" And they appreciate our time. So Chris, why don't you kick us off?
I just get Excel spreadsheets is what I see most often, because sometimes lenders will pull down from their own CRM. That's fine. But if you just pull a spreadsheet and you want to put use of proceeds, purpose of the loan, BizAct, commercial real estate, you want to identify that. Then you want to identify the amount of the loan. You want to identify the pricing, which is spread over pricing. And I'm assuming it's variable, but you may need to indicate if it's fixed or not if you come from a fixed rate lender. So you want to indicate pricing. And then last, I would probably put like location of the deal. Maybe your bank is sort of a regional lender, so you might want to put the state. That's the basic amount of information that you could send to someone looking to hire you for a BDO role. And then based upon that, they would have a conversation with you going through each deal. Hey, tell me about this $2 million commercial real estate loan in California. And then at that point, you can have a conversation and say, oh, it's an expansion loan. I did it 100% financing. It had debt service coverage of 115. So I would just do a basic spreadsheet with those columns that I mentioned there, and maybe highlight some, stellar deals that you got done quickly. Maybe you want to highlight some deals that were marginal in advance too. And that way you have a conversation with the hiring manager of, how would you look at this marginal deal? Would this absolutely not get done, or would this actually make it through at your shop there?
So does this gentleman already have closings? Has he been a BDO for a while, or is this somebody who's new trying to break into BDO?
In the question, he says he's being interviewed for a BDO role, but he only has a few years of BDR experience. So
Seems like he doesn't have a
Right.
pipeline.
So they're
really,
asking
kind of
him
this
for
question.
2 years of closed loan current pipeline report to be produced for a third interview. And I'm going to assume he probably doesn't have all of that. Is that typical that you
Make
would
it up.
see?
No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Make it up.
Yes.
Is that typical for a third interview? And
Yeah, it is actually, it is typical. I'm not saying that necessarily it's like the gateway to a third interview. By third interview, it's like either you like me or you don't. But
Yeah, it should be first.
honestly, it's pretty common for a hiring bank to ask you for your production for the last couple of years. And the best way to do it is exactly how Chris said. Basically, just put an Excel spreadsheet together that shows, the type of deal that it was, if it was secured or not, the pricing on that deal, things of that nature, just to kind of give them a high level. I mean, to be honest, they're probably going to give it a quick glance just to make sure that you're real, just to make sure that the deals look like they make sense, to make sure that it looks like deals that they would probably want to do at their shop. But that is a pretty common ask for a lot of banks. Hopefully he actually has access to that information. Not every bank is as tech savvy as our bank is, where we have a CRM that you can just go into and you can see all of your closed loans for the last couple of years. Certainly I've been at other banks previously where that would have been a little bit more of a challenge. And I'm not like Ryan Kroge, where I already have all that stuff put together on the yellow dog
20-year
or on the
spreadsheet,
spreadsheet
right.
that's been around since spreadsheets existed. So
Love Microsoft.
or the yellow college rule.
he used to have
notebook.
to call Bill Gates and tell him to enter it manually. He's
We love Microsoft.
Ryan
Hey,
had a
type that in
typewriter.
for me.
We love Microsoft.
Yeah, he has to have Bill punch that in
miss you,
manually
Ryan.
for him.
So the answer to this question is to give your pipeline on a typewritten piece of paper and mail it to them. No,
exactly. By pigeon, preferably.
courier pigeon.
You want to put an Excel spreadsheet together. Honestly, the only thing I would say that maybe I got a tip one time about this is you can also add any deals that you placed in other places. So if you found a deal and you sent it to another lender and they got home on that deal, that's a deal that technically you found. You're kind of the broker, quote unquote, in that situation. So you may also want to add a separate area of your spreadsheet where you also list any deals that you found that you weren't able to get
Great
home on,
advice.
but you gave to another lender and they were able to get home on. Right. So
I've
maybe
seen
you didn't
that.
do 10 million in production. Maybe you really did 15 or 18 million in production if you count the deals that your shop wouldn't do, but maybe this shop would.
The assist.
Yeah, I've seen that, like funded elsewhere. But for this person in particular, if they don't have any volume, obviously they can't put together this spreadsheet for them. So if I were in their shoes and looking for a BDO role, I would just be transparent. Hey, I have not produced, but here's what I have done. I have, worked on these types of deals. I worked on $30 million as a BDA. Most of them were business acquisitions. I helped do this in the process for those. I'm familiar with this. I have a network of referral sources that I reached out to or that I've worked with over the course of a few years. It's going to be a little bit hard to meet that requirement that they're asking for without the pipeline, but they could explain it away with the deals that they've touched and have been exposed to. And then I would always put together, if I'm new, trying to make a plan. If I join your shop in the first 30 or 60 days, here's my production plan. I plan to attend these conferences. I plan to do outreach to these business brokers that I've already worked with as a BDA prior in my prior bank, and put together a written plan that maybe will tell the story better than a spreadsheet that has zeros in it, right?
And one thing you guys should definitely understand is that, it's dangerous being a BDO out here with no production. You need to realize that you're leaving yourself in an extremely vulnerable situation because you can't leave where you are because no one wants to hire somebody who doesn't prove that they can produce. If you have no production, who's going to hire you? And you also leave yourself open to being fired by your bank. And then it's going to be even a more difficult situation because then you're going to be jobless looking for a job, which we all know is not the way that you want to be looking for employment. So, if you are not producing at the shop that you're at, you need to either start producing immediately or you need to leave before they ask you to leave.
Immediately.
Immediately.
Yesterday.
That's how the conversation usually goes. Start producing immediately.
Or leave.
Amazing feedback on that question. And we also want to say congratulations on making to the third interview. And if you have any other questions you want to shoot our way heading into the next interview, or let us know what happened if you got the job, that would be awesome. But I do want to thank everybody for jumping in on the conversation today and being able to be a part of it. It's topics like these, it's questions like these that keep our show lively and exciting. Missed Ryan and Alan today, but we will see them next episode. If you guys want to submit questions again, that email is thebdoshow@gmail.com. Shoot them our way. Until next time, thanks for being with us.